This is the Neurosurgery Podcast.
Welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. JP and I are super excited today. We are joined by Rod Oskouian. Rod is from Seattle Science Foundation. If you have not heard about it, you've been under a rock somewhere. SSF has a giant presence in not only social media, but also the online educational offerings in spine and neurosurgery. Rod, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. This is really cool.
Rod, why don't we start off by just having our listeners get to know you a little bit better? Tell us a little bit about your education, where you grew up, where you went to medical school, residency, and how you ended up in Seattle.
So I grew up in Seattle. I did medical school at UCLA, and then I did my residency at the University of Virginia. And then I spent a year doing a fellowship in New Zealand. Actually, I was in Auckland. And I really wanted to come back to Seattle. And so that's how I ended up at Sweden.
Rod, can I let's the audio is not coming through very well. Is it for you, JP?
Okay. Is it?
I can hear okay, but if the connection's not good, then we won't be able to talk. Is it skipping or just quiet for you?
No, it's like I think when you leaned back, Rod, it got super echoey.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe just sit like forward like you are right now.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to prompt you again and answer the question again,
Sure.
and then okay. Well, we can just start over again real quick. Okay, let's start over.
Sure.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. JP and I are super excited. We have an old friend on today, Rod Oskouian at Seattle Science Foundation in Seattle, Washington. Rod is an old friend of mine, a spine surgeon, and of course, if you don't know about SSF, you've been living under a rock because SSF has a gigantic footprint in the media, in the social media, and educational world of what we do as spine surgeons and neurosurgeons. Rod, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So JP and I wanted to start off by asking you, like, maybe you could introduce yourself to our audience a little bit. Tell us about your educational background, how you ended up being so integral at SSF with all the great educational materials online.
Sure. So I actually grew up in Seattle, and I went to medical school at UCLA, and then I did my residency at the University of Virginia. But the whole, I think Seattle Science Foundation is kind of a result of a bunch of things that happened. One of them is that I grew up in the backyard of Microsoft, so I was kind of the outlier at my high school. And I remember, back, when I was in high school in the late 80s, early 90s, email, like I remember I had both a Mac computer and an IBM computer. And all my friends, like, we were all geeks. We were programming. I had one of the very first versions of email. We were sending emails back and forth in our school. And then later on, this thing came out called Pine. But it was really kind of very elementary. And all my friends' parents worked at Microsoft, big names, all the people now and literally it was this small little company that, grew up that in the backyard of where I grew up. And so I was kind of always surrounded by tech and was always fascinated by it. And it's interesting because when I look back on it, healthcare is one of those areas where God, prior to COVID even, we weren't even using, people don't know there was Teams, Microsoft Teams, there was, Zoom was around. People, they would just resist using even Skype, like no one would use any of this technology. And so for us, honestly, I think we were happen to be in the space, and we just kind of kept to our model, which is putting, using technology as the great equalizer and putting everything online. So you don't need a password, you don't need anything. If you just have your cell phone, you can basically watch our videos, and that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah, and I've been so impressed. I've been out a number of times over the last decade to your center, and it's very impressive what you and Jens Chapman and many of the other world-renowned spine surgeons have done. I remember that one of the first things you guys did was like a live simulcast of surgery with somewhere in Asia, and someone was talking about like you have a T1 cable connection, so you could actually broadcast live from Asia. People are asking questions to Asia without any delay, right? There were so many elements that were so amazing for that time period. Now it's become much more rote, but you guys were real leaders, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the benefits, honestly, Mike, is that I'm surrounded by really smart people, and it's just in the DNA of the city. It's just unbelievable how much technology has like changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I will say I so frequently say on the show I'm the resident in the room, I'm the trainee here, but specifically as a resident who's been very interested in spine since medical school, training at a wonderful place like Rush with such luminaries in the field of spine neurosurgery, we love the SSF videos. It is such a great opportunity to, even surrounded by the kind of luminaries and leaders and innovators in spine surgery that I'm privileged to train with, to be able to get that kind of direct instruction from people at that level at other institutions, both in the labs that you broadcast, in the lectures you broadcast, the interactive sessions and the panels. I'm a YouTube junkie, and this is genuinely one of my most frequently watched channels on the elliptical, on the treadmill, between cases in the workroom. I'm being a bit of a fanboy right now, but it's very genuine, and I just wanted to get that out of the way up front. So, in light of how tech driven you seem to be as a person, I'm curious if you could cast your mind back to when you were getting into medicine and first getting interested in neurosurgery. Your career now has taken you into a field within neurosurgery that is so tech driven, especially minimally invasive spine these days, the instrumentation, all the technology, the fun toys that we have to do these surgeries for our patients. When you were getting into neurosurgery, did you already have some of a lean towards the spine and that mechanical way of thinking, or did that love kind of grow and develop as you were getting through your training?
That's a great question, and I think it kind of evolved. And during my training, which John Jane was the chairman at the University of Virginia, and the training there was so intense. And he really, I mean, it was 7 days a week. We even had it was Saturday and Sundays. Sunday we had journal club. It was called Sunday School at his house, and I mean, it was a great residency. But literally, when you left there, he wanted you to be a neurosurgeon and not pigeonhole yourself in this. He encouraged you to go. Let's say if you're interested in spine, go to a fellowship. Um, and so I think it was during my time with John Jane, and seeing how passionate he was just about neurosurgery, but he did have a serious passion for spine too. And he took care of Christopher Reeve. Many people don't know that. And just seeing him and how he evolved the Journal of Neurosurgery. And he really, people don't realize this, but as neurosurgeons, we kind of lost spine. The orthopedic surgeons, not that it's a competition, but and Mike, you remember this, we weren't doing fusions. I mean, we were letting the orthopedic surgeons do, and they're really, I mean, credit to the orthopedic surgeons. They drove all the technology, the fusion. They were doing pedicle screws in the 80s. And I have to say, for me, it was John Jane because he really wanted neurosurgeons to get back in the spine, and he was so passionate about it. I think he was a big influence for me to go in the spine.
Yeah, Rod, the history of John Jane, his impact on the world of American neurosurgery is cannot be overstated. Um, Tell us more about like how it is doing all these educational programs. Like I'm always amazed. Like I come out to Seattle and there you are. There's Jens. You're inviting people to your house. You're taking the time on your Saturdays and evenings to do these I mean, you're not getting paid for this. This doesn't pay anything, right? It's a hobby of yours. what drives that passion? Was it what John Jane inspired, or was there something else that really drove you to this?
Honestly, I think it's a combination of both. Um, I think for me, it's being on the receiving end, and learning from people like John Jane, Neil Cassell, Ed Laws, and I think that had a lot of influence on it. But then also, I think having the tech background, I was really fascinated by the fact that, especially in medicine, you know, um, you kind of, whether you're going to neurosurgery or cardiac surgery, to learn to be a surgeon, it would always blew me away how much time we spent reading, writing, textbooks, and then when you look, you're like, how are you actually going to learn how to do this surgery? Like, there's no way for you to learn it.
Yeah.
You can't just go practice doing a craniotomy. It's just not the same. And so for me, I was always fascinated by like, why is it that it's this like secret? And then even our societies, you join, you go to a meeting, it's usually in a nice city. You go to some lectures, but they never record it. It's never, online. And then again, for me, it was like, God, we have all these really smart and talented people, but people are always afraid of like going to the OR, showing. And I think it's now gotten the part where, and again, social media has helped, technology has helped. People are not afraid to show surgeries. I remember when we started doing it, like our hospital was freaking out. Live surgery. Oh my God, what if the patient, something bad happens? So it's kind of, I think part of it is my early tech influence, but also I think it was having, seeing art, especially in neurosurgery, where you go, God, there's only one John Jane, there's only one Majid Sami, and these guys, God forbid if something happens, they die. That all that knowledge is gone, and no one has it. And so I think for me, having those influences really have shaped me, and hopefully, with these platforms, you create like a historical record, so people can say, "Oh gosh, these guys were crazy. They were doing." Now we use robots to do all this stuff. They actually were doing it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great historical record, especially, each year you have these different summits. I love the trauma summit every year, and you can see kind of the evolution in the way people talk about different injuries, different pathologies, different techniques, especially when you bring the same panelists back and they kind of share how their practice is evolving over the years. It's a wonderful record to have, as you say. And I wonder, we have so many phenomenal guests on this show. We've been doing this for 6 years now, and we can always talk to people about how do you do surgery, how do you talk to people in clinic, how do you make time for your family, and all these things that are universal to any surgeon. But it's a very rare guest where we can talk about someone else who has a podcast or who has a YouTube series. And so maybe I can tap you for some free advice. There have to have been a couple times over the years where you and Dr. Chapman and everybody, you were sitting there going, what are we going to do this time? Where, because we have these talks where we've done the episode about making it to your kid's baseball game. We've done the episode about what happens when you get a bad complication, and we sit here and think, what else can we do? Who can we have on? What can we talk about? So, have you all ever had not writer's block, but I guess presenter's block, and thought, oh man, how are we going to mix up the platform for next year? And how do you get past that?
Honestly, I think the thing we always try to do, JP, is that, and I think you probably guys probably do it on your podcast. We do a lot of the stuff is live. It's recorded, but it's actually broadcast live. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because I mean, I've had it where I have a hot mic on me and I'm like saying something, and they edit it out on the online version. But if you're watching it, I remember like one time I had the mic on me and I was going to the bathroom and I was like, it recorded the whole thing, and then and then and then fortunately it wasn't bad, but it was just like, wow, I didn't know. And my mic was in the back of my pocket, and they were trying to look for me. They're like, where did Dr. Oskouian go? Like, we can't find him, but he's got his mic on and it's online and everything. So mean, part of the fun and humor, I think, for Jens and I and the team up at SSF is we don't take any of this stuff seriously, and it's kind of fun because now it's kind of cool, right? Like TikTok, Snapchat, I like Instagram was like everyone's beautiful and you're perfect. Now it's okay to be, um, make mistakes, and it's kind of fun to not edit stuff. So I think that's what we try to do is kind of do it unscripted. And Mike, you've been there, where somebody just goes off and starts talking about different things. It's kind of cool because you get their perspective, and a lot of times we go over like the slotted time and people start asking questions. But I think, we try to make it so it's not so edited, or, like a production. And I think that's been helpful because then you really don't know what's, sometimes you go way off tangent.
Yeah, so you have that wonderful summer camp for students that are in college, and you have really tapped into something, especially with younger folks. I want to ask you something that has been on my mind a lot, which is, Alan Friedman had this great paper about the next generation of neurosurgeons, and it was really about the millennials, and then now we have Gen Z, and then there's Gen Alpha, and all these other generations. You guys are providing this kind of like medium where people can search quickly and they can find the videos, they can find the lectures, kind of like, and it's like you said, it's free. You don't need a password, right? How do you see the differences in how people are learning how to do surgery? In other words, you've probably seen like basically four generations of surgeons come through. How do you see that changing? Is it changing? Like people aren't reading anymore. People aren't, buying textbooks. Like how is SSF part of this movement? Are you adapting to it? I'm very curious because we train residents in Miami, and I sense there's a shift in how people are actually getting trained and getting information.
I totally agree with you, Mike. And the shift is happening so fast that, I think, like even just this last year, we had one very good fellow, who literally trained with a robot during residency, and that's just the way they train. So I think it's evolving. I do think residents and residency and education is evolving and it's changing. I think, people don't read books as much anymore. It's going to be interesting to see how I think people are. I think, the content for med schools is going to evolve. I think the content for residency is going to evolve. And actually, I'm very optimistic because I don't think you need to do 7 years of neurosurgery residency. I think it can be compacted down. Um, but I do think, there has to be focused learning. There has to be like, um, a different style. And I think technology, just like, for example, now, I'm using, robotics a lot. It's a little bit more relaxing. It's a different way to kind of do surgery. It's not as stressful. I don't have to worry about the fluoro. I can plan my surgery. Um, but I do think that, again, this is just my perspective. I do think it's going to change dramatically, and I do think there's opportunity to make our lives like better. So you're not in the hospital all the time. You're not dealing with insurance denials. You're not dealing with, being a resident and not having a personal life and waiting, putting your life on hold for 7 years. I think there's some positive things that are going to come about. But what I am worried about, Mike, is having, um, doctors who don't have the training. Let's say if the power goes out and all of a sudden, the hospital's on generator and you have a robot that's doing the surgery, like, are they going to be able to finish that surgery? And that's a question I don't think I can answer, but I think that's the way it's evolving is that we could potentially rely too much on technology.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear you talk about the readers versus the watchers. I'm an avid reader, have been my whole life for pleasure, and it's in the entertainment realm and in the art realm. People say the snobs say that reading is better than watching a movie because when you read, you get to decide what things look like, but when you watch a movie or TV show, the director, the cinematographer decides for you, and you just passively consume that instead of actively generating the images in your mind. But if you think about it, if you're trying to learn how to do surgery and an expert is explaining to you how to do the surgery, you want that reversed. You don't want the reader generating an image in their mind of what they think the person is describing. You want the expert to say, this is exactly what it should look like. And this is exactly how I move my hand with the instrument and so on. And so I think you're completely right that this generation who is being raised, I'm part of it, being raised in an era as surgical trainees with videos like this available, we have access to educational content that I'm sure you dreamed of when you were in residency. And you wish this guy on the other side of the world, who I read his paper, I wish he could just show me, but I can't fly over there. And, hats off to you. I agree about the 7 years thing. I'm in my seventh year now, so the ship has sailed for me. But I wrote some papers about that. We've talked about that on the show all the time about the duration of training, but to your point, the quality of the years, not just the quantity of them. But I wonder now, looking back on the corpus of educational content that you have developed in Seattle, and particularly with these in mind, are there any sessions or for you days of your life that you remember as events, but even just looking back on the videos that stand now as that corpus of work that are of particular pride for you, ones that you think about each year when it comes time to do this summit again or this conference again, you go, oh, I remember the one a few years ago when this spontaneous moment happened, or I really put together this great lab demo. Do you have any sessions or videos that you're particularly proud of?
Honestly, JP, I think when I look back on it, I don't think there's one particular video, but I think what's most meaningful for me is when I talk to Mike, yourself. When I go to a meeting and people just come up to me and just start talking to me and telling me how meaningful and impactful the online um, educational stuff that we put out. I think to me, like that's the most important, um, feedback I've gotten in terms of like video stuff, and it's crazy to me. Even like when I'm on vacation, I'll give you an example. Like I was in Italy last summer, and I was with my family, and you know, there was another neurosurgeon who recognized me on the beach, and he came up to me and he just started talking to me, and he was watching the video on his phone, and it was like, and it was me. He's like, "This is crazy." He goes, "I'm watching you right now, and you're on the beach," and I was blown away. I'm like, "This is crazy. Like, how could this possibly be?" And so it's those kind of experiences where you're like, wow, this is unbelievable. Here I am in Italy, and there's a neurosurgeon who's watching the videos online. And it goes to show you, I mean, the technology thing, like people talk about going viral. I mean, it's online. The whole world is watching all this stuff. And what's crazy too, I remember when I was in elementary school, and I remember that I was fascinated by Moore's law, and and it's really become a phenomenon now with technology, right? Because if you look at computing, look at chips, look at now gaming, I mean, it's unbelievable how these things go. And we've had videos where 20 million people have downloaded it. I mean, it's crazy. And there's so much, the world wants so much of this knowledge, and I do think those are the things like I'm most proud of. And it's not just me. I mean, it's people. And Mike, you probably had this too, where the faculty and even our fellows, because it gives them an opportunity to like have stuff. And Mike, I don't know how you feel about, but I'm sure you probably had people come up to you, whether it's SSF or something you've done online. It's incredible how much stuff. If you just post it, people actually will download it.
Yeah, I'm not as forward thinking as you, but I do frequently have patients who said, I found a video of you, but it was on Seattle Science Foundation.
Yeah,
So
isn't it amazing?
now I want to ask the question everybody's always asking, but you're actually someone who's authoritative enough. I know you have a lot of connections in the tech world, and I want you to give us a glimpse of what you think AI is going to do to our field, that is neurosurgery. Okay, so specifically spine surgery, neurosurgery. what is AI going to do? How long do we have before we are being told what to do? And I don't even want to get into robotics. We can have you back on to talk about that. But give us just a little glimpse because everybody has an opinion, but you actually are there at ground zero in Seattle.
Yeah, so I'm actually very optimistic. Okay, I don't think it's going to be doom and gloom. I don't think everybody's going to lose their jobs. I actually think surgery is going to be funner. I think it's going to be way more precise, and it's going to involve like, a lot less brain power from us. But I think we'll still be involved in planning. What are we going to, what's the surgical procedure, reviewing the final plan. It's kind of like flying a plane, right? you know, Someone's still got to be there to figure out, okay, what's the weather, what's my gut instinct telling me? Because that kind of stuff I think is really important. You can't replace the human brain. I don't care what anyone says with AI and how good it gets. Um, it's never going to replace our intuition, our experiences and stuff that can happen. Things can change in a single moment. So I don't believe in us losing our jobs. I think it's going to be really awesome. I think in 5 years, you're going to be doing laminectomies with the robot. I think it's going to be quicker, faster. It's going to be a lot more efficient. I think medical, like stuff that drives us crazy, op notes, dictating, um, insurance denials. I think all this stuff, it's going to make our lives easier. I do think the one thing that is the unknown is, there's all this, digital twins and is there going to be a digital twin of Mike Wang that's going to be available 24/7 online? I think that's the kind of stuff it's a little creepy to think about, right? Um, but I think from a day to day perspective, it's I think it's going to get better, and I think for doctors and for patients, like your clinic. I mean, I love it. I haven't dictated a note in 3 years. I use AI for my notes, and it's cool. I mean, I don't have to do anything. I just hit a button and it records, and it creates a note. It has ambient technology. It's HIPAA compliant. I mean, all these things. It's like I never dreamed of having. It's all there now. So I think I'm positive about it. But again, like with any technology, I think there's got to be some guardrails, and I think hopefully, as neurosurgeons and spine surgeons, I think it's going to benefit patients tremendously.
We're going to hold you to that.
Optimism.
What's that, JP?
Well, I just said, what a message of
Yeah.
optimism. Usually
Yeah.
we have some doom and gloom when we talk about AI and robots here, but it's heartening to see that, as Dr. Wang said, someone at Tech Ground Zero has a positive outlook on even the near-term future for these things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, again, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it'll make surgery fun again, less stressful because you're not having to deal with, the peer to peers. You're not having to deal with doing your notes, coding. I mean, all this stuff that like, it just, it just takes that extra, I call it like extra cortical surface area in your brain that you're like, oh, I have to do this. I have this checklist in my mind. It's like it's kind of gone.
Well, Rod, thank you for that wonderful message. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for all that you do for the greater society of neurosurgeons and spine surgeons. We're looking forward to this very optimistic future, working with AI, not against it.
No, it's awesome, and it's an honor to be on your guys' podcast. I've seen it, and I think it's really cool. I congratulate you guys for doing such an awesome job.
Thank you.